Have you ever felt like you're living with a stranger? That the woman you fell in love with has somehow vanished, replaced by someone you barely recognize? You're not losing your mind. You're finally starting to see through the veil that Carl Jung spent his entire life trying to help men understand. Right now, as you're watching this, millions of men are suffering in silence, trapped in relationships where they feel emotionally manipulated, confused, and perpetually walking on eggshells. They love deeply, yet they're met with emotional withdrawal. They give everything, yet feel like they're never enough. They try to understand, but the more they try, the more lost they become. Here's the painful truth that most men will never hear. You've never actually seen the woman you claim to love. What you've been seeing, what you've been desperately trying to understand, is a carefully constructed mask. A psychological survival mechanism so deeply embedded in the feminine psyche that even she doesn't fully realize she's wearing it. Carl Jung called this the most dangerous illusion a man can fall into. Because while you think you're loving her, you're actually loving a projection of your own unconscious mind. And until you learn to see through this illusion, you'll remain forever trapped in cycles of idealization, disappointment, resentment, and pain. Today, you're going to discover the hidden archetypal forces that silently drive women's deepest emotional behaviors. You'll understand why she can be nurturing one moment and emotionally distant the next. Why her love feels conditional even when she swears it isn't. Why you feel like you're constantly failing tests you didn't even know you were taking. This isn't about blaming women or demonizing the feminine. This is about liberating yourself from the unconscious prison you've built around your own perception. Because once you understand what Jung discovered about the feminine mask, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. You need to understand something fundamental about the feminine psyche that goes against everything you've been taught about women. From the moment a girl enters this world, she's trained to wear masks, not because she's deceptive by nature, but because the feminine has learned, through thousands of years of evolution and social conditioning, that survival often depends on adaptation, on becoming what others need her to be. Think about it. You've seen it yourself, haven't you? How she can shift her entire personality depending on who's in the room. How she becomes the perfect daughter around her parents, the supportive friend in her social circle, the professional colleague at work, and then, who is she with you? Which version are you actually getting? Jung identified this as the feminine persona, a psychological mask so sophisticated that it operates below the threshold of conscious awareness. She's not lying to you. She genuinely believes she's being authentic in each moment. But beneath this adaptive surface lies what Jung called the shadow, the rejected, repressed, and hidden aspects of the feminine psyche that she herself fears to acknowledge. Let me paint you a picture of how this plays out in your daily life. You come home after a long day and she greets you with warmth and affection. You feel safe, loved, understood. But then, something shifts. Maybe you said something innocent. Maybe you didn't respond the way she expected. Or maybe nothing happened at all. Suddenly, the warmth vanishes. She becomes cold, distant, perhaps even hostile. You're left confused, asking yourself, what did I do wrong? Here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. Within the feminine psyche exists a powerful duality that Jung called the Great Mother archetype. On one side, you have the nurturing mother, the source of all life, comfort, and unconditional love. This is the feminine at her most divine, the energy that makes you feel like you've found home in her arms. But inseparably linked to this light side is the terrible mother, the devouring, controlling, emotionally castrating force that can psychologically destroy a man from the inside out. You've experienced both, haven't you? The woman who makes you feel like a king one day and a disappointment the next. The lover who lifts you to heights of joy, then plunges you into depths of confusion and pain. This isn't because she's crazy or emotionally unstable. This is the archetypal feminine dancing between its polarities, and you're caught in the crossfire of forces far older than civilization itself. But here's where it gets even more complex, and this is what most men never realize. While she's unconsciously shifting between these archetypal patterns, you're not seeing her clearly either. Your own psyche is playing tricks on you through what Jung called the anima. your internal feminine image that you project onto every woman you meet. Think back to when you first fell in love with her. Remember that intoxicating feeling, that sense that she was perfect, that she understood you like no one else ever had. That wasn't her you were seeing. That was your own anima, your soul's image of the ideal feminine, projected onto her like a movie onto a blank screen. This is why the beginning of every relationship feels like magic. You're not falling in love with a real woman. You're falling in love with your own unconscious projection. She becomes the mother you never had, the savior who will heal your wounds, the goddess who will give your life meaning. And she, sensing this projection, unconsciously adapts her mask to match it. She becomes what you need her to be, not through conscious manipulation, but through an ancient feminine instinct to harmonize with masculine expectation. But projections can't last forever. Reality always breaks through. And when it does, when you start seeing glimpses of who she really is beneath the mask and beyond your projection, that's when the real psychological warfare begins. You start noticing the subtle power games, the way she withdraws affection when you don't comply with her unspoken expectations, the small criticisms disguised as concern, the emotional reactions that seem disproportionate to the situation, the way she can make you feel guilty for things you didn't even do. You tell yourself you're being too sensitive, that you're imagining things, but deep down, you know something's off. You feel it in your gut, that creeping sense that you're being psychologically manipulated, even though you can't quite put your finger on how. This is the shadow feminine at work, not evil, but unconscious. It's the accumulated resentment of generations of women who had to suppress their power, their anger, their authentic desires. It's the rage of being unseen, unheard, reduced to an object of masculine projection. And now in relationship with you, all of that unconscious material finds its outlet. She doesn't consciously decide to manipulate you, but her shadow, sensing your weakness, your need for maternal approval, your fear of abandonment, knows exactly which buttons to push. She becomes simultaneously the source of your greatest comfort and your deepest anxiety. You need her, but you also fear her. You love her, but you also resent her power over you. Now comes the moment of truth that will shatter everything you thought you knew about your relationship. The breaking point arrives, maybe through a major conflict, maybe through a betrayal, or maybe just through the slow erosion of the illusion. The mask doesn't just slip, it falls off completely. And what you see underneath terrifies you. You see the rage she's been suppressing, the contempt she's been hiding behind sweetness, the calculated nature of what you thought was spontaneous affection. You realize that many of her emotional reactions weren't about what you did or didn't do. They were about control, about keeping you in a constant state of uncertainty, always trying to please her, always walking on eggshells. You see how she used your own psychology against you, how she intuited your deepest insecurities and played on them, how she withheld affection to modify your behavior, how she created drama to test your commitment, how she made you feel responsible for her emotional states, turning you into her psychological caretaker. But here's the truly shocking part, the revelation that Jung understood, but most men never grasp. She's not doing this because she's evil or consciously manipulative. She's doing this because you taught her to. Your projections, your unconscious need for her to be your mother, your savior, your meaning giver, all of this activated her own unconscious patterns. You didn't fall in love with a woman. You fell in love with a mirror of your own unintegrated feminine. And she, sensing this, became that mirror, losing herself in the process. The terrible truth is that both of you have been dancing a dance of mutual projection and unconscious manipulation. You projected your anima onto her, and she adapted her persona to match it. You needed her to be perfect, so she tried to be perfect. You needed her to save you, so she tried to save you. But underneath the performance, resentment grew. The shadow accumulated power. Every time you idealized her, you pushed her further from her authentic self. Every time you needed her to be your emotional anchor, you forced her deeper into the mother archetype. And the more she played these roles, the more her shadow grew hungry for revenge. Not against you personally, but against the masculine principle that had imprisoned her in these patterns. This is why relationships so often end in bitter resentment. It's not that love dies, it's that the projections finally shatter. And what's left is two people who never truly saw each other. Two souls who danced with illusions, while the real human beings underneath remained strangers. You realize now that all those times you felt manipulated, you were right. But you were also the manipulator. All those times you felt unseen, she felt the same. All those times you felt like you were going crazy, you were actually starting to wake up. The feminine mask exists. The games are real. The manipulation happens. But it's not a conspiracy of women against men. It's the tragic dance of two unconscious beings projecting their unhealed wounds onto each other, creating a hall of mirrors where authentic connection becomes impossible. So where does this leave you? Standing in the rubble of shattered illusions, you might feel hopeless. You might think the answer is to become cynical, to close your heart, to never trust women again. But that would be missing Jung's entire point. The path forward isn't to wage war against the feminine mask. It's to stop needing it to exist in the first place. You see, as long as you're projecting your anima onto women, you're forcing them to wear masks. As long as you need them to be your mother, your savior, your source of validation, you're activating their unconscious patterns of adaptation and shadow manipulation. The real work, the work that Jung spent his life pointing toward, is integrating your own feminine. It's healing the wounded boy inside you who still seeks maternal approval. It's facing your own shadow, your own manipulative tendencies, your own unconscious games. When you stop projecting, something miraculous happens. The woman in front of you slowly becomes visible. Not the goddess you imagined, not the mother you needed, not the demon you feared, but a real human being, flawed, complex, carrying her own wounds and shadows, but also capable of authentic connection. This doesn't mean accepting manipulation or staying in toxic dynamics. Once you see clearly, you also see which behaviors are unacceptable. You set boundaries not from anger or fear, but from clarity. You no longer participate in the dance of projection and masks. You learn to recognize the signs. When she's speaking from her authentic self versus when she's in an archetypal pattern, when she's responding to who you really are versus when she's responding to your projection, when connection is genuine versus when it's a performance. And most importantly, you learn to love differently. Not the intoxicating love of projection, but the grounded love of reality. You love her not as your anima, but as a separate being walking her own path. You support her in removing her own masks, in integrating her own shadow, in becoming whole. This is terrifying for most men because it means giving up the fantasy. It means accepting that no woman will ever complete you, save you, or give your life ultimate meaning. It means standing on your own psychological ground, taking responsibility for your own emotional states, finding your own inner source of validation. But this is also liberation. When you no longer need her to be anything other than herself, you free both of you from the prison of projection. When you see through the feminine mask, you don't become bitter, you become compassionate. You understand why the mask exists, why the games are played, why the shadows dance. You realize that beneath every feminine mask is a soul that longs to be truly seen, just as you long to be seen. That behind every manipulation is a wound that needs healing. That within every shadow is light waiting to be integrated. The greatest gift you can give a woman is not your projection of perfection, but your commitment to seeing her clearly. And the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to withdraw your projections and face the reality of who stands before you. This is the path Jung illuminated. Not easy, but real. Not comfortable, but transformative. Not safe, but alive with possibility. Now I ask you, how has this revelation changed your perspective on your past relationships? What masks have you been seeing, and what projections have you been casting? Share your insights in the comments below. Your story might be the key that helps another man wake up to his own patterns. If this video opened your eyes to dynamics you've been sensing but couldn't articulate, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into the hidden psychology of relationships. And don't miss our previous videos that explore other aspects of masculine-feminine dynamics that most people never discuss. Remember, the goal isn't to master women or decode their psychology like some kind of puzzle. The goal is to see clearly, first yourself, then others. When you do this, relationships transform from battlegrounds of projection into opportunities for mutual growth and authentic connection. The mask exists, but so does the face beneath it. Which one you see depends entirely on how willing you are to stop projecting and start perceiving. Your journey to psychological freedom begins the moment you decide to see what's really there.